Hey, this is Peggy Morgan from season 18 of The Ultimate Fighter, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the third episode, which picks up right after Shayna's loss to Juliana, so we get to see some of the aftermath to that fight. So right at the beginning of the episode, Misha shows up with the butterfat milkshake for Juliana and the piece of chocolate cake for Shayna. I'd actually sat next to Juliana on the van ride to eliminations, and she'd been talking about that butterfat milkshake even then. So it was definitely a little bit of an obsession with her, and it was very nice of Misha to bring it. As I mentioned in my blog, listening to Juliana hop up and down in the kitchen and squeal in that baby voice annoyed the living shit out of me, which could have had something to do with the fact that my teammate had just lost and I was being bitter, and hearing somebody celebrate under those circumstances was less than fun. It could also have to do with the fact that Juliana is pretty annoying. Which I'll get to later. Most of the people in the house had kind of a difficult time dealing with her, so my aggravation could have been a product of that. She also brought the cake for Shayna, who I should mention was exceedingly drunk by the time Misha got there. Was extremely drunk by the time Misha got there. Like pretty much as soon as she got back to the house after the fight, she started hounding Johnny Walker. And right before Misha got there, she'd been out by the pool delivering orations to me and Jessamine and Raquel about like the nature of being and existence. It was like real drunk guy 101 speak, where she's like, have you ever fallen to the bottom of the darkest, blackest pit and had to pull yourself out by your own cornrow? Because I have. Which was actually really, really funny. As much as Shayna can come across as a douchebag on TV, she's very self-aware and she's kind of creating a character. So living in the house with her, even when it got to be too much, and there were definitely moments where I was like, Shayna, please just stop. I was aware that she was aware. She's doing it on purpose. She's creating a character. And that kind of changes things if you realize that. And also watching the interaction with her and Misha, knowing that Shayna's incredibly drunk, kind of makes it a little bit more funny, I think. So another important component of the aftermath to that fight was Ronda's reaction to it. You got to see some of her post-fight speech to us in the gym the next day, and I think it's pretty obvious that she's very disappointed. I don't think she was really disappointed in Shayna as much as in herself. She felt like she'd really failed, and she's definitely upset that she's lost to Misha, even if it was just by proxy. So there was some of that in there too. One of the things that she said that didn't make the editing cut was this thing about every single second, which means that every time we're in the cage, we need to be fighting every single second that we're in there. You can't be thinking about what you're going to do in the next minute. You can't be thinking like, oh, I've lost this round, but screw it, I'll bring it back next round, which is what Shayna was thinking and how she ended up losing. You have to fight every second like it's the only second you have. So after the show, without really, I mean, we talked about it in the house, but we hadn't ever talked about it after, like, oh, I'm going to go do this today. Jessamine and I went out and got that tattooed on our forearms, and we both got it in the same spot, and we both got it technically upside down, so it's facing up towards our faces instead of down like you would normally get it. Here, I'll show you mine real quick, if we can. It's really hard to see, but you can kind of see how it wraps around my wrist, and it says every single second. And that's just as a reminder to me to do that, to get in and fight my ass off, fight like I have nothing to lose, and fight like that second is the only second I have. So I thought that was kind of cool, and I think Shayna's going to get the same one. She actually had Rocky design her a tattoo, so hers is going to be a little bit different, but we're all going to have matching tattoos. So I guess I should at least mention this business of the friends with benefits thing between Juliana and Chris Holdsworth. I'd heard rumors about a love letter from Juliana to Chris, but I hadn't actually heard the letter itself until I watched the episode, and I have to tell you, it was pretty awkward. I was kind of squirming while I listened to that. But as far as like being aware of any blossoming romance in the house, I really wasn't. Like, I didn't see a lot of like open flirting between them. However, one thing that it's worth mentioning is that Team Tate and Team Rousey were on like such opposite schedules that I didn't see a lot of them together, so they could have been like completely openly like banging and I wouldn't have known it. But yeah, that was strange for me to watch, because even though I'd heard rumors of it, I hadn't really seen it unfold. There was also the issue with Juliana herself, which kind of came out in a number of different ways on this episode, which was that Juliana really did annoy everybody in the house pretty badly. there were times when I really did feel bad for her. She's only 22 years old, and it's a difficult situation socially to be in. The house is really kind of a pressure cooker. I mean, you're around these other 15 people all of the time. There's not a lot of outlet. Obviously, we're going to get on each other's nerves sooner or later. But consistently, Juliana was the most despised person in the house. I think a lot of it had to do with the immaturity and just the little annoying things she did, like that British accent thing, which probably came across as like really silly and immature on the TV, because you guys haven't been living locked in a house with Juliana for days while she's doing that. It was really annoying to everybody there. There's also that situation where Jessamine jokingly said to Raquel, "Oh, I know all of the matchups." It was just like Jessamine being Jessamine and joking around, and they took it really seriously and thought that she actually knew the lineup. One thing, like, they make it sound like Jessamine actually like sat down and told Rocky, like, "I know this person's gonna fight this person and this person's gonna fight this person," and that never happened. She never listed specific matchups. She just said, like, "I know who's fighting whom." And like Team Tate ran with that, which I think was more of a product of them being really annoyed with Juliana and wanting to have a reason to dump on her, than actually believing she'd given up the matches. So that was an interesting situation. That was completely that bitch Jessamine starting a bunch of drama, and that had nothing to do with Juliana. So that was pretty unfair. But then Juliana pointing the finger at Roxy was literally like the worst thing she could possibly have done. Because I don't think there's anybody in the house that didn't love Roxy and didn't feel at least like slightly protective of her, because she's like a very sweet, very childlike person, and nobody wanted to see anybody attack her ever. So pointing the finger and being like, "Oh, Roxy, you live in a room with Team Rousey, obviously you're the one who told them," just like rang as completely like disingenuous for one thing, because there's no way Roxy would do that, and also just made Juliana kind of look like a bitch. So that was an interesting situation. As for the fight itself, I don't really have a lot to contribute to that. You guys all saw it, and there's not a lot I can add. Holdsworth and Beal are both extremely strong fighters, and so it could have gone either way, and I wasn't incredibly surprised by the outcome. I was surprised that Holdsworth was able to knock Chris down with the strike. I'm not sure that would have happened if Chris's right hand hadn't been injured, but I mean, that's speculation. There's no way of knowing. One thing that did surprise me watching the episode, and I'm shocked I didn't know this about them living in the house with them for 6 weeks, was that both of them had older brothers who had been shot. That was a real shocker, and it kind of added a dimension to their characters that I hadn't known about. So that was interesting to me as somebody who lived with them and was now watching as a viewer. So I'm almost out of time, but I just want to say before I finish up that Ronda Rousey is getting a lot of shit on the internet right now. And I just want to remind everybody that what you're seeing is a very heavily edited version of what happened. Like, they aren't able to include everything that went on in the weeks that we were there. You only have, what, 60 minutes or something? So what you're seeing is like the most crazy, most dramatic stuff. And even though Ronda, as I mentioned in my blog, can be a little bit of a crazy bitch, she's a super awesome crazy bitch, and I really like her. She's a very genuine person. I'm, to this day, really happy that I was on Team Rousey. I feel like they did a great job supporting me. They were really there for me. They made the experience a lot easier for me than it might have been otherwise. One of the things that's very interesting is that at the time, it feels like pretty much everybody in the house, except for maybe like Juliana and Holdsworth, really wanted to be on Team Rousey. And now watching the show, it seems like Team Tate is being portrayed as the better team to be on, which is like the opposite of what was actually happening in the house. So I just kind of want to take a second to stand up for Ronda and say she's actually a pretty cool person, and you're not seeing the full Ronda. Alright, that's all that I have for this week. Tune in next week, Wednesday at 10. Jessica Rakoczy is going to be taking on Roxanne Modafferi, and it should be an awesome fight. So tune in, and then I'll try to get my vlog up a little bit sooner next week. Alright, later.